Gracie, help me out. Huh? Why? Well, my wife told me that I have to pay for all our living expenses except for groceries. I overheard this conversation at the trendy restaurant where I went to have lunch with a friend. Seated nearby was a man I recognized, chatting with a woman I'd never seen before. The man was my husband. Yes, I had stumbled upon my husband's infidelity. My name is Heather, and I'm a 27-year-old part-time working housewife, married for 4 years. My husband, Isaac, is a year younger and works part-time at a restaurant as a freelancer. In college, I found him cute and didn't worry too much about him not job hunting. I naively thought that as long as I worked hard, our future would be fine, not giving it any serious thought. But after marrying him upon his graduation, just because we were going out, I began to feel uneasy about his $1,300 take-home pay. At that time, I was in my second year of working and earning $1,900. We could make ends meet, but I worried about what would happen if we had a child. Before our wedding, my in-laws were very concerned about our marriage. "Are you sure you want to marry our son? You're still young. Maybe you should wait until Isaac's job situation is more stable." I didn't understand the meaning of her words at the time. Living with my parents, I never had money troubles and didn't comprehend the significance of supporting ourselves after marriage. After experiencing the challenges of marriage, I realized how naive I had been and often regretted rushing into it. In the beginning, I was determined to make our marriage work, believing I had to put in more effort. So I started a side gig working from home in addition to my regular job. Surprisingly, it suited me well, and after 3 years of marriage, I quit my full-time job to focus solely on working from home. Our lifestyle improved, and we managed to save a considerable amount. We were financially stable enough to welcome a child, but unfortunately, we still couldn't conceive. Isaac kept quitting and starting part-time jobs, so I suggested he become a full-time house husband. "Hey, I'm earning a decent amount, so you don't have to push yourself to work part-time. I want you to be a stay-at-home husband and support my work." But he made a disgusted face at my proposal. "What? You just sit in front of a computer typing all day?" "No, I'm working." "You quit your job and made me work. What do you mean you're earning?" "I'm supporting us, and if I quit my job, we won't be able to make ends meet." I didn't know what he misunderstood, but he said that. "Remember when I told you I wanted to quit my job because I could earn more working from home? I guess you didn't understand me." "What? Working from home is just pocket money. Leave the work to me and you take care of the house." "Hey, you wouldn't say that if you know how much I make." I tried to show him my bank book, but he refused to look at it. Thinking there was no problem with him continuing to work part-time, I dropped the subject. But then he started acting strangely. I had received $700 for living expenses until now, but he stopped paying even that, and his time at home outside of his part-time job gradually decreased. One night, when he came home drunk, I complained. "You know, you also use electricity, gas, and water in this house, right? At least help with some living expenses. It's true I wanted you to become a full-time house husband, but since you decided to continue working part-time, I've been doing the housework. And because of that, I've reduced my working hours. Also, where have you been hanging out lately?" But he just glared at me, annoyed. "Shut up. I'm the head of this household. To you, I'm your master. Wear a maid outfit and welcome me home saying welcome back. You're a full-time housewife. Don't do side jobs." He yelled and fell asleep on the sofa. Fine. If you insist, I'll focus on housework, I said, smiling at the drooling Isaac. The next day, I apologized to my clients and informed them that I wouldn't be able to continue working once I completed my current tasks. For the next few days, I focused on finishing my remaining work, and eventually, I became unemployed. Even so, we could afford to live comfortably because we had plenty of savings. I could live without working for about a year, so I didn't have any problems. When Isaac came home from his part-time job, I told him, "Isaac, I've decided to quit my side job, just like you said." He smiled a little. "Really? You finally realized I was right, huh?" "Yes, you were right." "Of course. I'm working hard every day, and I'm more important than you, who just earns a little money by playing with a computer at home." "Yes, it seems so." Although annoyed by his tone, I still handed him a cash card and a bank book with a smile. It was a newly created card, and I had already contacted each company to change the direct debit to this card. "I have a favor to ask of you, my wonderful husband." "What is it?" "It seems I'm not good at managing money. I can't make ends meet with the $700 you give me, and you didn't even give me living expenses last month or the month before." "Don't you have any savings? I didn't know you were so careless with money, Heather." "Yeah, it seems that way. That's why I want to leave it to you." "If that's the case, leave it to me. $200 a month should be enough for food expenses, right? You should be able to manage that." My strategy of appearing submissive seemed to work, and he confidently took charge of all the payments except for the $200 a month he gave me for food expenses. Of course, $200 wasn't enough for food expenses, so I covered the difference with my own savings. The first rent payment seemed to go well, but as he watched the bank account balance gradually decrease with each payment for electricity, gas, and phone bills, his face turned pale. When I casually asked, "How's the money management going, honey?" he forced a smile and replied, "It's going well, of course. I'm the best at managing our finances. If we don't have enough money, let me know. I still have some money from my side job. I don't need to rely on such a small amount of money." "All right. Next month, the water bill will also be deducted, so be sure to let me know if you're really in trouble." "What? The water bill?" His face turned pale, but I left him with a smile. Currently, Isaac is supposed to be providing $1,100 for living expenses, excluding food, but since we've always been living frugally, there should be no problem. We chose a cheap apartment for rent, and our utility bills are just a little over $100. We have no debt, and our internet and phone bills aren't that high either. With some tight budgeting, our expenses should be around $1,000. He can use the extra $100 as pocket money. In fact, I've saved the money he has given me for living expenses until now, and I have about $20,000. If he needs more pocket money, he can either increase his part-time work or switch to a better-paying job. I think it's up to him whether or not he wants to do that. But I didn't know anything. I had no idea what he was doing behind my back. One day, I went to a trendy restaurant that was popular recently for lunch with my friend Iris. It was a popular place among women, and there were a few couples inside. We ordered the popular menu items, took some selfies, and had a fun time talking and laughing about recent events. At that moment, I heard a man's voice from another table. "Gracie, help me out." "Huh? Why?" "My wife actually told me I have to pay for all the living expenses except for food." "You're married?" "Yeah." My wife used to take care of everything around the house. Then why don't you ask your wife to do it again? I can't do that. I boasted and said something stupid. She must have gotten mad at me and decided to let me handle the living expenses. I looked at the table in surprise. It was Isaac and a woman I had never seen before. The woman was a young girl in her 20s. She was just the type he would like. When I told Iris that one of the people in the couple was my husband, she became very interested and started recording their conversation on her smartphone. Was it a lie when you said you were working part-time for your dream? Huh? Oh, did I say that? But you can actually make a living on a part-time job. He was laughing foolishly, and the woman glared at him. I thought I might be okay with marrying you, but wow, you're the worst. If I were your wife, I'd definitely divorce you right away. Who else but your wife would put up with a broke, freeloading man who asks for help after spending all the money on her? Don't ever contact me again. The woman said that and stood up, quickly leaving the restaurant. Iris immediately followed her. When I looked at Isaac, he seemed to be crying with his head down. So I stood up, paid the bill at the register, and chased after Iris. When I went outside, Iris had caught up with the woman and said, "Can I talk to you for a moment?" The woman looked at her suspiciously, so I stepped in between them right away. I'm Isaac's wife. We heard your conversation with him at our table earlier, and we were wondering if we could talk to you for a moment. The woman turned pale and apologized. I'm so sorry. I didn't know he was married until just now. I understand. It's okay. We just want to talk for a bit. Iris, the woman named Gracie, and I went to a different cafe, and we decided to hear her story. It seemed that he had been cheating on me with Gracie for about half a year. She said that the reason he started acting tough towards me was probably because she praised him. I got her permission and recorded our conversation. When I first met Isaac, he was such a gentleman and would buy me anything I wanted. He would always take me to nice restaurants for meals and brag that he was making enough money from his part-time job so he wouldn't have any problems with living expenses. That's why I said things like cool, manly, and reliable and that I liked him, but it was just lip service. Iris nodded in agreement. I see. He misunderstood what was being said to him. That's why he started acting tough towards you, who didn't show him respect as a husband. Respect him as a husband? That's impossible. He only makes $1,300 a month. I've never seen him chasing his dream, and he's always complaining about not having money. He's always getting into fights with other staff and quitting. I think he's changed jobs over 20 times. He can't work in the neighborhood, so he works at a store 2 stations away. Upon hearing my story, both Iris and Gracie turned pale. How in the world did you manage to have a married life with him? Well, I'm the one who makes more money. Honestly, I'm not struggling financially. Maybe I hurt his pride as a man when I asked him to become a stay-at-home husband. But that's not a good reason for him to cheat, is it? Iris looked at me seriously and said, Of course not. I didn't say anything because I thought you two were happy together, despite Isaac being a freeloader. But if you are suffering, I have something to say. Divorce him. He doesn't care about you right now. I can't imagine you raising a child with someone like that, if you ever have one. I want you to divorce him before you have children and find someone better for you. I nodded vigorously at her words. Yeah, you're right. I've been thinking I need to work hard for him all this time. From now on, I want to work hard for myself. After that, Iris introduced me to a lawyer who was an acquaintance of her husband. The video of Isaac and Gracie arguing that Iris took, as well as the recorded testimony from Gracie, served as evidence, and the divorce preparations went smoothly. Then I brought up the subject of divorce to Isaac. Hey, do you know a girl named Gracie? He looked surprised for a moment, but then looked away, pretending not to know her. No, I don't know her. Who is she? You don't know? Could it be that you have early onset dementia or something? You're making fun of me again? Your husband? Uh-huh, I am. I showed him the video of him and Gracie arguing that Iris had sent me. You really don't remember anything about Gracie? It seems like you've been supporting her quite a bit for the past 6 months. Hey, before I took over managing the money, you had about $500 in allowance, right? But from what I hear from Gracie, it seems like you've been spending more than $500. Where did you get that money from? When I asked, his face broke out in a cold sweat, and he stammered out an answer. Actually, I borrowed $2,000 through a cash advance. What? You went into debt just to support her? Well, she said that men who spend money on her are attractive. So what about the repayment? There's no problem with that. My hourly wage has gone up recently, and I'm taking home $1,400. I also switched the cash advance to a revolving payment plan so I can pay it back every month without any trouble. But when I make the payments, I'm left with only $100. I somehow managed to convince her to settle for a cheaper place the last time. As he explained with a laugh, I was left speechless and exasperated. After a deep sigh, I immediately presented him with divorce papers. I can't believe you'd borrow money with a revolving payment plan. You're insane. But how you spend your money is no longer any of my concern. As a severance payment, I'll give you 20% of our assets. I've saved part of the money I've earned and the living expenses you've paid me. It seems pointless to ask you for alimony, so once we're divorced, never involve yourself with me again. Huh? What are you talking about? Even if you say 20% of the assets, it's not that much, right? How can you really make demands with that kind of money? This is why women are so brazen. Since he didn't seem to understand, I showed him the reality. It's $20,000. What? That much? Are you lying? Saying you actually didn't have it just to disappoint me? That's not gonna work. I've figured out these past 3 months paying for my own living expenses. There's no savings in this house at all. Not wanting to talk to him any longer, I took out my bank book from my bag and showed it to him. You didn't want to see the bank book when I tried to show it to you before. Did you not want to face the reality that I'm earning more than you? Well, too bad. I'm earning $9,600 a month. I have a total of $100K in savings. In shock, Isaac looked back and forth between the bank book and me. Anyway, I don't want to be married to someone like you, who's irresponsible with both money and women. I don't even want to divide our assets. If we could cut ties, I'd even pay off the debt you've created. So don't ever get involved in my life again. From now on, we'll communicate through our lawyers, so don't contact me directly. With that, I picked up the luggage I had prepared earlier and left the house. When I returned to my parents' house, they greeted me warmly. After returning to their house, I started working from home again. I resumed working with the clients I have been dealing with before. At first, my income didn't increase as much, but after a while, it returned to its previous level. After that, Isaac apparently cried to his parents, but since I was offering favorable terms, we decided to proceed with an amicable divorce without any negotiations. At one point, we had a discussion with our lawyers about the division of assets, and Isaac and my in-laws came to my house. My in-laws apologized profusely, making me feel almost guilty. We agreed that the division of assets would be settled in a way that satisfied me, and I would transfer $20,000 to Isaac as a severance payment. According to my in-laws, they were afraid of giving him a large sum of money, and they thought that even $20,000 was too much. We will make Isaac pay for the debt he incurred. You don't need to pay for it, Heather. We'll also handle the cancellation fees for the apartment and the disposal of the furniture and appliances. We're truly sorry for the trouble our son has caused you. My father-in-law apologized, and it seemed that my mother-in-law had scolded Isaac quite a bit, as his face was beet red and he was looking down. Seeing him like that, I felt a bit relieved. I had been on guard, thinking that he and my in-laws might demand reconciliation after learning about my monthly income, but I'm glad that they were good people. Since then, Isaac has been forced to work at his relative's company, living and working there. His debt was only about $2,000, so I think he could pay it back quickly, but he seems to be working like a horse without being able to go out freely. This is probably a good lesson for him, who had always been spoiled and dependent on me. I can only pray that he becomes a decent member of society. As for me, I continue to meet up with Iris and have lunch together. This time, as a token of my gratitude, I gave her a travel voucher. Then she said she wanted to go with me and made travel plans for us. I wanted you to travel with your family. Of course, I'll go with my family too. But you're my best friend, so it's okay to prioritize you, right? She said that with a big smile. I consider myself fortunate to have become friends with her. I want to continue to cherish such a best friend in the future.
Take care of my dad. You also want to be with dad, right?
This is what my husband told me. He left the house after leaving these words behind. I'm Isabel, 35 years old, and I'm a housewife. I have been married to my husband Lin, who is 8 years older than me, for 10 years. We don't have any children. Before getting married, I worked as a receptionist at a major company. My husband was also an employee at that company. Sometimes the receptionists were invited to the company's employee gatherings, and that's where I met my husband.
Isabel, this is the first time we're talking, isn't it? I work on the 8th floor. Did you know that?
By chance, we ended up sitting next to each other, and true to his sales profession, he was skilled at conversation and quite entertaining. During the gathering, he made me laugh a lot. As we talked, I found myself drawn to him. I thought that if I were with this person, we could live a life filled with laughter. Later, I heard that my husband had seen me when I was working as a receptionist and had been interested in me from the start. A week later, the two of us went out for drinks and started dating. During our relationship, wherever we went, we were always laughing. After 3 years of dating, we decided to get married. At his request, I became a housewife and quit my job as a receptionist. During the first few years of marriage, every day was enjoyable, and I was incredibly happy. I looked forward to my husband coming home, and it was a daily joy to eat the meals I cooked together and listen to my husband's stories.
When I eat your cooking, Isabel, all the fatigue from the day just disappears. Thank you so much always.
I had a very good relationship with both of my in-laws. My mother-in-law is kind and easygoing, and I have never experienced the stereotype mother-in-law mistreatment. She is a housewife with more experience than me and is excellent at cooking, so she often taught me. My father-in-law Kenny is a person who is good at talking, cheerful, and funny, just like my husband. He was intelligent and held a high position as an executive in his company. When we talked about our marriage life, we were envied by our friends because everything seems to be going smoothly for us. However, recently my husband has been going on frequent business trips, and he always comes home late. Since his promotion, he had become busier than before, which was one factor. Additionally, it had become more frequent for him to come home after I had already gone to bed. We had almost lost the opportunity to have dinner together, and he had stopped making me laugh. One day, my mother-in-law passed away. Her pre-existing lung condition suddenly worsened. My father-in-law did his best to support her during the 6 months she was hospitalized. The two of them had a very close relationship. In the late hours on the day of the funeral, I saw my usually cheerful father-in-law silently crying in front of the mother-in-law's photo, and I couldn't stop my tears. Since my mother-in-law passed away, my father-in-law lost his energy. He was retired and living alone, so I worried about him, and I made it a habit to call him occasionally. I repeatedly told my husband that we should go visit him on our days off, but he declined, saying he was too busy. One day, my brother-in-law and his wife, who lived near my in-laws' house, came to our home.
I haven't told my brother about this until now, but something is off with Dad. I initially thought it was just because he hasn't been the same since Mom passed away, but his forgetfulness has become unusually severe. When I went to the hospital yesterday, he was diagnosed with dementia and certified as requiring care. Since we were worried about him living alone, we are considering living together with Dad. However, we both work, so we can't be with him 24/7. I wonder if there is any way you could help us occasionally?
I couldn't believe what my brother-in-law was saying. I knew that my father-in-law wasn't feeling well, but I had never realized that he had dementia just from our phone conversations. As I was about to offer my help, my husband spoke up first.
No, we're going to live with Dad. Don't worry about it. I'm the oldest son. Isabel is a housewife, so she can with him all the time. I will help too. Let's take care of Dad together. Isabel, is that okay with you?
I was caught off guard by how quickly the conversation had escalated, so I hadn't quite organized my thoughts yet. I have never had experience with caregiving. While I might be able to help occasionally, I wondered if I would be able to be there constantly by his side. I had many concerns, but deep down, I had prepared myself for the possibility that one day, as the wife of the oldest son, such a day would come. Above all, I wanted to be of assistance to my father-in-law, who had taken care of me all this time. So I made the decision to live together. I will be fine. After all, I have received a lot of help from Kenny all this time. After giving that response, a few weeks later, my father-in-law started living with us.
I apologize for any inconvenience. If I ever say something foolish, feel free to get angry at me.
That's what my father-in-law said to us. We made the decision to live together. But caregiving turned out to be more challenging than we had imagined. My husband is rarely home, leaving me alone with my father-in-law. His symptoms are still mild, and he recognizes us properly. However, he often buys the same items repeatedly and frequently misplaces his keys and wallet. There are good days and bad days, but when he goes out, he tends to come back having lost something, so I accompany him whenever possible. My father-in-law, perhaps feeling guilty for constantly needing my assistance, sometimes seizes the opportunity when I'm busy with housework to go out alone. When he returns safely without losing anything, I feel relieved. However, when we went shopping together yesterday, he bought eggs again, not realizing that he had already bought them before. After that, for the following 3 days, he went out alone, and each time he bought eggs again. It made me realize that from now on, I absolutely had to accompany him. My husband comes home late every day, often after my father-in-law has already gone to bed. Since we started living together, his business trips have increased even more. He doesn't ask about my father-in-law's well-being or engage in conversation. I have many stories about my father-in-law that I want my husband to listen to, but whenever I try to talk to him about it, when he comes home, he always makes excuses like being tired and doesn't listen at all. The fact that he doesn't even listen to me was quite stressful for me. Even when he is occasionally off and at home, he doesn't make much effort to interact with my father-in-law. There are even times when he ignores my father-in-law when he tries to start a conversation. One day, while I was hanging up the laundry,
Dad has gone out.
Despite my expressed desire not to let him go out alone, my husband casually informed me without any intention of helping. He had no intention of assisting me at all, and I was dumbfounded. One day, my husband, who was always late getting home, came home in the evening. I had been feeling stressed by my husband, but I was happy that he came home early. However, when he returned,
I suddenly need to go on a long-term business trip starting from tomorrow, so I have to prepare.
He began packing his belongings into a large suitcase.
Where are you going on the business trip? How long will you be gone?
My father-in-law asked, but my husband didn't answer and continued with his preparations. Judging by the amount of luggage, it seemed like he would be away for more than a week, possibly even traveling abroad. While he was getting ready, my father-in-law fell asleep. As I was washing the dishes, my husband finished his preparation, came out of the shower, and sat at the dining table.
Once you're done, Isabel, come and sit as well.
I was called by my husband. He might be absent for a while starting from tomorrow, but I was somewhat happy at the thought of being able to have a leisurely conversation with my husband after a long time. However, my husband started saying something unbelievable.
I want a divorce. I've been having an affair. The other person also had a spouse, but they finally broke up. So let's separate too. I'm going to marry that woman. Starting tomorrow, it won't be a business trip. We'll go on a trip to celebrate our separation.
I thought it was a bad joke when I saw him continue to talk nonchalantly and unintelligibly. Huh? You were joking, right? Stop it. This isn't like you. It's not funny, I said. And then,
No, I wouldn't joke about something like this. I've fallen in love with someone other than you. Please sign this and send it back to me.
and my husband continued in a detached manner and handed me a divorce papers. Once I realized it wasn't a joke, I became flustered. Since when had he been having an affair? My husband has a busy job, often coming home late and going on frequent business trips. I never questioned it at all. Perhaps all those reasons were just lies to meet his affair partner. I felt angry at myself for not noticing anything at all. During the time I was taking care of his dad, he might have been enjoying himself with his affair partner. With that thought, tears started flowing. Don't joke around. I can't just forgive something like that. What about Kenny? I shouted at my husband while crying.
I will still rely on you to take care of that. Dad loves you more than me, right? You seem happy when you're with Dad, don't you? Even if I'm not here, you won't be lonely with Dad around, right? I will at least provide the minimum living expenses. I'm asking you.
My husband completely ignored all of my emotions and said with a refreshed expression,
Wouldn't you be fine with your father-in-law around? I will provide the living expenses.
Did he think that saying would make me agree? I was so enraged that I couldn't control myself. Please stop saying stupid things. If I divorce you, Kenny won't be family anymore, right? I have no obligation to take care of him. My husband suggested that we take care of his father, but he never lifted a finger to help and left everything to me. I do love my father-in-law, of course. However, caregiving felt like a daily battle. I kept crying and screaming at my husband, remembering the difficult days we went through. Don't you dare joke about it. You have no idea about the difficulties of caregiving. Seeing me upset, my husband said,
Calm down. It's already decided, so crying won't change anything. We can't talk in this state. Let's discuss it again tomorrow.
And with that, he went to the bedroom. I kept shouting at my husband as he headed towards the bedroom, but he didn't even look back. It had been years since I cried this much. Even after my husband was gone, I continued to cry for a while. I realized I had cried myself to exhaustion and ended up falling asleep on the sofa. When I woke up, it was 5 in the morning. By then, my husband was no longer in the house. On the dining table, there was a divorce document and a note.
Please sign it and send it. Take care of Dad. Thank you for everything. Goodbye.
That was written on the note. I couldn't understand the meaning, and I cried out again. Then, my father-in-law woke up and was surprised to see me crying.
Isabel, what's wrong? What happened?
Please take a look at this. I showed the note and divorce papers to my father-in-law and told him everything that happened last night. As he listened, my father-in-law also shed tears. He loved my mother-in-law deeply. He had never even considered the thought of infidelity. And there was a time when my father-in-law and I talked about how we couldn't forgive someone who cheats while watching a drama. It might have been a shock for my father-in-law to learn that his own son was doing such a thing. And after listening to the whole story, my father-in-law began to speak to me slowly.
Isabel, I'm incredibly grateful to you. More than words can express. I cannot forgive him. I don't want to let it end like this. Would you let me handle it?
As I looked at my father-in-law speaking, his eyes were filled with honesty. It felt like his usual self, as if his dementia had been cured.
First, gather solid evidence of their infidelity and find out where they are. Hire a private detective for that.
Upon hearing my father-in-law's words, I felt a strong sense of support. I couldn't keep crying. I had to fight back. Following my father-in-law's advice, I left the house and headed to the detective agency. I'm not sure how many days they will be on their trip, but they should be back soon As they have work commitments, I informed the detective. A few days later, I received a call from the detective. They provided me with numerous photos of my husband walking with the other woman and entering a house together, along with information about his whereabouts. The other woman appeared to be around 25 years old and seems to be unemployed. I was surprised by the significant age difference and couldn't help but feel disgusted by my husband's actions. When I returned home and reported the finding to my father-in-law, he said,
Well done. I'm going to go there now. You will be fine on your own. Isabel, you must be tired, so have a rest.
With those words, my father-in-law headed towards the house where my husband was apparently living with his affair partner. It was a weekday afternoon, and my husband wasn't at work. When my father-in-law arrived at the house, the woman came out.
Nice to meet you. I'm the father, and I came to see my son. I have dementia, and my previous daughter-in-law used to take care of me. From now on, I will be taken care of by his new wife, right? I would like to set a date for the move.
At first, the woman greeted my father-in-law with a friendly smile. However, when she heard the words dementia and caregiving, she responded by saying, Who are you? I have nothing to do with this, and sent him away. When my father-in-law returned home, he told me to contact my husband's workplace next. Excuse me, I'm his wife. My husband said he's going to see his mistress and hasn't come back yet. Is he at work? I told the woman on the phone in a blunt manner. I'm sorry, Lynn is currently out of the office. Would you like me to have him call you back? I was told. Please do. I told her and hung up. I was very nervous, but my father-in-law, who was listening next to me, praised me after the call ended. And a few hours later, my husband called. As soon as I answered the phone,
What the hell are you thinking? Calling my workplace? Are you out of your mind? You should have called my cell phone instead. I've already given you the divorce papers. We are getting divorced, so there's no cheating or anything, he said. Because of you, it seems like there are rumors circulating in the office. I heard it from one of the office workers with a smug look on their face. Don't mess around.
It seems like our plan was a great success. Upon hearing the panicked words of my husband, I deliberately maintained a calm tone and responded, Oh, wasn't it goodbye? I know we were getting divorced. I'm fine with you not contacting me. With that, I hung up the phone. Even this response was instructed by my father-in-law. My husband, in a state of panic, looked quite ridiculous, and I and my father-in-law shared a laugh. And that night, my husband returned home. My father-in-law was already asleep. After I hung up the phone, and he kept calling multiple times, I thought he still had something to say. But as soon as he returned, he apologized at the entrance.
I made a regrettable mistake in a moment of confusion. You haven't filed for divorce, right? Please stay with me after all. Please continue to take care of me from now on. Thank you.
I couldn't help but burst out laughing. He had shrunk so much that it was hard to believe he had been so confident until the evening. So the other person hadn't separated from her husband, right? She seemed surprised to hear that your father has dementia. So what? We are still getting a divorce. My husband has a surprised expression upon hearing my words.
You? How do you know about that?
Kenny spoke with that woman. Oh, it was also Kenny's idea to call the company. I've already found a lawyer, so let's meet at the courthouse. I'm going to demand a substantial amount of compensation. Take care. Well then, goodbye. As I said that, my husband had an unbelievably shocked expression on his face. I proceeded to kick my husband out of the house right then and there. I felt a great sense of relief. While taking a shower, I couldn't help but laugh repeatedly as I recalled the sight of my husband's kneeling. The next morning, when I informed my father-in-law, who had just woken up, that my husband had returned,
If you had woken me up, I would have shouted at him too.
he told me laughing. While we were having that conversation, my brother-in-law arrived. It seems like my father-in-law had called him.
I apologize for my brother's rude behavior.
He apologized to me.
We will take care of that at our home. I understand that you will face difficulties with upcoming trial, but I will do my best to support you as much as possible.
My father-in-law also conveyed to me.
I apologize once again for my son's actions. Perhaps I have raised him incorrectly. You have a very kind woman. Please, find happiness.
He said this and firmly grabs my hand. I can't forgive my husband, and I no longer love him. But I have nothing but gratitude towards my in-laws aside from my husband. I truly felt fortunate to have met these people. Subsequently, the trial took place, and the photos obtained by the detective became decisive evidence, allowing me to successfully claim compensation. When I informed my father-in-law and brother-in-law about the divorce being finalized, they were extremely happy. It seems that my father-in-law, who takes medication, has mild cognitive impairment that hasn't worsened, and my brother-in-law is also relieved. I heard from the lawyer that my husband is also being sued by the cheating partner's spouse. I heard that my husband had a hard time at work because of the phone call I made and ended up quitting his job. Although I'm worried about whether I will receive proper compensation, I felt like he had been punished. As for myself, I started working as a housekeeper. I visit the homes of elderly people who live alone and assist with household chores. Being a full-time housewife for many years and not having worked for 10 years, I was very anxious about whether I could work properly. However, thanks to my in-laws, I'm very skilled in the household chores and can also provide some caregiving assistance. It's a perfect job for me, and it's going quite well. Moments when I receive thanks from the families I visit as a housekeeper makes me incredibly happy. Despite everything that has happened,